Good evening and welcome back to the Professor Penn podcast. David Penn here, your host, episode number 159, coming to you on Tuesday night, November 19th, 2024. Lowdown. That is the very talented Boss Skaggs, one of his greatest hits, Lowdown. And that's the title of tonight's episode because it's the lowdown now, okay? I mean, it's the lowdown. Lowdown has a couple different meanings. Number one, the lowdown, hey, the lowdown The low down, that's low and that's down. And so when we do things that are skullduggerous, you could say they're low down. And also, low down means getting the real facts, finding out what's going on, which oftentimes they're not pretty. I think it was Solzhenitsyn who said the truth is often not fun. Not fun. And we're facing the truth as American citizens. That's what we're doing. We're facing the truth. And the post World War II Democrat liberal order has lost control of the narrative, lost control because of podcasts like the Professor Penn podcast. We're just babies in this game. There are people that have giant audiences. And if we're called one day to have a giant audience, we'd love to have it. But we're together and we're important and we're doing what we're supposed to do. We're a political action podcast. We're very influential here in Minnesota and in many states. And we're aiming to bring about a well being culture. And you can see from the news, boy, there are people that are resisting that for sure. For sure. I've been saying on the podcast that, people think they won with the Trump victory. And I've been saying, whoa, that was just a battle. Trump is not even yet the president. He's the president elect. And it was just feeling too good. Good morning, Tanner.
Good morning, David.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm all right. I was up all night. Didn't sleep a wink. Couldn't sleep. Couldn't sleep for a lot of reasons. Let me give you some of the reasons. Number one, I got divorced when I was 55 years old. Something most 55-year-old men with privately held businesses do not do because it risks everything you've worked for your entire life because your wife is your partner. And when she gets in there and takes the cash, there might not be anything left. You could end up destitute. And I've been laboring along here for 10 years, trying to work my way out of this trench that I dug for myself. And you see, I'm taking personal responsibility because it was my choice. I'm not saying it was my fault, but it was my choice to get off the bus. And, with the business and kids, a beautiful house, tennis court in the backyard, swimming pool, the whole nine. I was a very successful globalist. And I didn't know it at the time, but I changed everything. And my business hangs by a thread because we've just gone through 4 years of neoliberal economic policy, which has wreaked havoc on almost every small business in this country, except for the military industrial complex and the medical industrial complex and the tech titans that are the overseers of the whole deal. If you're in one of those three domains, oh, you're doing good. Oh, and you could be a university professor, you're doing good. The rest of us in the real economy, like Tanner, we've struggled with inflation, high interest rates, the BS of the government telling us it's all good in the hood, when in fact we know the ass has fallen off the donkey. They're lying. The numbers are BS. The economy is BS. And why is it BS? Because we're borrowing $1 trillion every few weeks. Every few weeks, $1 trillion. Not a million, not a billion, $1 trillion. And they keep telling us how great the economy is. I look on X and I see these Democrat influencers. How could we lose? The economy is so good. William Shatner was just on a podcast with Bill Maher. He couldn't understand how we lost. The economy is so good. Well, Bill Shatner is a very, very wealthy man. For him, of course it's good. I live out here in SD 45 in Minnesota. I live at the very last block of Minnetonka, which is a relatively affluent suburb. And you cross the street and you're in Plymouth, and you go a little bit deeper into Plymouth, and boy, it's not wealthy there. So I'm like the last house on the left. But you go into YZ in Minnetonka, these people have money. They have 401ks, they have IRAs, They have intergenerational money. There's a lake called Lake Minnetonka there. There's 70 billionaires that live in the area because we're the home of Cargill, which is the largest privately owned company on planet Earth. Makes Amazon look like a pimple on the buffalo's ass. And you've probably never heard of it. The largest commodity trading company in the world. Privately owned. 70 billionaires right in the neighborhood. And guess what? They're not so down with Professor Penn's message. You know what Professor Penn's message is? You people are full of shit. That's my message. You see this hat? This hat, the peace symbol. I would like all of you to go out to him, to wherever you got to go and get yourself a peace hat, peace sign hat, and start wearing it around. Because you know what we're finding out on the low down? The low down, the dirty, dirty low down. The truth, the cold, hard truth. The United States is the asshole. I'm sorry. I just, it pains me to say it. But if you go back through the body of work, the previous 158 podcasts, where we deconstruct the Democrat liberal order, and we look at the history of Europe, and there's many different street corners. That's what happens when things get fouled up and you go to war. It depends from what perspective you look at it. One could say Vladimir Putin is a megalomaniacal, dictatorial, expansionist empire builder who had to be contained by NATO and by U.S. military power lest he take over all of Europe. Or you could say that the United States violated its promises to the Russians at the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991, where there seems to be fairly good scholarly evidence that James Baker, the Secretary of State, promised the Russians that NATO would not move to the east and incur upon Russia's borders, this is exactly what has happened. Now, there's a lot of scholarly argument about this. Was this promise actually made? I was not there. I do not know. But if the promise was made, we clearly here in the West broke our pledge to the Russians. But I go a step deeper than that as an American citizen. Why are we in Europe at all? No benefit to me. Tanner, does war in Europe benefit you or your child? Is there any benefit for you that you perceive?
No.
No.
Uh,
He gave a one-word answer. He felt a little bit pressed on that one. There's no benefit. Tanner's a young man. He's got a young daughter. Beautiful daughter. Beautiful. What is the benefit to her of the United States being in Europe? And I'm going to tell you what the benefit is to the people that put us there. It's part of that European intellectual tradition that gave us Marxism. It also gave us the British business model of slavery, drugs, and piracy. It also gave us a John Mackinder's world island theory. And we've talked about it. And if you're new, you go, what the hell is that? Well, that was a scholarly theory generated in the halls of the British Academe that the world island, Eurasia, whoever controlled that world island, controlled the world. That was a British colonial imperative. Control the world island. And they have these academics that spread that out all throughout the European universities. And then we sent our scholars over there, as a young country. Let's send like my daughter, my daughter. The fourth of five, plus I got the stepson. So it's really the fourth of five that I'm the father. Plus now this is how this thing works. She's going to Columbia, Bernard College at Columbia. She's spending the spring. All expenses paid, scholarship girl, she's going to Cambridge. She's going to England because she loves me so much. She's going right into the eye of the tiger there. That's just great. Love you, baby. Have a good time. And they're going to steep her even deeper in the Columbia mindset, which includes the Eurasian landmass, the world island theory. And the world island theory includes a little poison pill. And it says, Tanner, whoever controls the heartland of the world island controls the world. And guess what the heartland is? Do you remember?
It's Russia, right?
No, it's the Ukraine.
So why that specific spot?
Why that specific spot? Well, it's a great breadbasket of the world, but it's strategically positioned in the Eurasian landmass and is a transition between East and West, kind of like Turkey. If you draw a line from Ukraine right down to Egypt, it's one line of demarcation between East and West, between worldviews. But what they really wanted was a toehold, a foothold to get into Russia, these British, because there's $100 trillion, $100 trillion of natural resources in Russia. Like they still call it a gas station with nuclear weapons. Like the Russian culture doesn't matter, Russian music doesn't matter, Russian literature doesn't matter, Russian art doesn't matter, Russian culture, Russian history, not. It's just a gas station. I was reading that on X just today. So disrespectful to the Russian people and the Russian traditions. And it's very strategically placed. Excuse me, it chokes me up. And also, we've got a mix of cultures there because in the Western Ukraine, you have Germanic people. That's why there are allegations of Nazis, lo and behold, embedded into the Ukrainian culture. They're Germans. But on the East, they're Russians, they're Slavs. You know, those two groups, Germans and Slavs, traditionally don't get along. So it was a toehold for the British imperial colonial enterprise to grind away on the Russians, and they attacked in 1805, and they tag team with their buddies and antagonists, the French, who invaded again in 1812. The British went in again in 1853, the Crimean War. 1917, the time of the Russian Revolution, Russia was occupied by many foreign powers. 1942, another European power. The Germans took a whack at the Russians. Operation Barbarossa, they got almost all the way to Moscow. Then we had the Cold War, and now we got this war. And they keep telling me, all these wars happened inside of Russia. And they keep telling me that the Russians are the assholes. And they may well be. They may well be. Although I have to tell you, I've met a lot of Russians. I never had a problem with any of them. But that's very anecdotal. But it's very difficult for me to accept the narrative that is fed to me. And I look on X and there's all these pro-Ukrainian influencers and all these pro-Russian influencers. It's just become a giant collision, a scrum. As I said, X is like those battle scenes from Braveheart where you see these thousands of warriors running into a valley to attack each other, and then it's just a scrum. I mean, you can't even tell who's going to win till the end. You know, it's crazy, right? You don't know. That's what this argument's like. But I take it back a step. Why is my country the policeman of the world? Why is my country the holder of nuclear weapons? Why is my country dependent on the military industrial complex? Why is my country continuously at war? I reject it. It's a scam, and we have to rise up against it. And that battle is going on right now in the administration, the new administration's picks for cabinet positions. It's on all your media. What is and you know, those Democrats, the New World Order people, they're trying to hang on to it. You know, I saw Sherrod Brown this morning. He lost his Senate race in Ohio. He's maybe 12 years a senator. You know, lost. And he was explaining his loss to Mika Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough on Morning Joe. And he said, you know, we've lost touch with the working class Americans. We Democrats. Saying this on MSNBC, which is hilarious because all that is a corporatist advertising platform. But that being said, you know, they call it the Democrat liberal order for a reason, Senator Brown. You are a Democrat and you are a liberal, and you're saying, boy, we didn't care about the workers. Well, the fundamental cornerstone of the Democrat liberal order is globalization and international trade. So when you stand up there and you say, "Oh, we forgot about the workers, that's the backbone of our party," you are a lying sack of bleep. The only reason this got obscured, because you Democrats, you were the slave traders, you were the Confederacy, you were the people that kept slaves. The only reason this thing got obscured so that we, the people, couldn't figure it out. People like me that was born in the 50s, we were born into this scam. Why we couldn't figure it out was the Republican Party, after World War II, got in on the Democrat liberal order. And the Republican Party became a free trade globalization party. So both parties, called the Uni Party, were all in on the same idea. And the only reason things are changing now is because the Republican Party is being reclaimed by new politicians, young people like Royce White for Senate here in Minnesota, like Donald Trump, president elect, and like all these people over the country say, wait a second, what's going on here? This is not republicanism. We're Democrats. And of course, you know what the Democrat says? Trump used to be a Democrat. Elon Musk used to be a Democrat. Yeah, right. We're figuring it out. I used to be a Democrat. Me, I was a liberal. Well, we're figuring it out now. We done been hoodwinked. And that's the dirty, dirty low down. Now, of course, that song is about the very often tragic relations between men and women. But I'm appropriating it. It's cultural appropriation. You like that? A little bit of cultural appropriation. I'm taking the dirty lowdown and I'm saying, man, we got to get real about this. We have to fight these people. They're not going to give up because their self-image, their image of self is dependent on the military supremacy of the United States of America, on the moral authority of the United States of America. Man, these people are sick. There's a guy here, Alex Plekish. He was a former national committee man. He's almost done. He's in my district. He's older than me. He's 5, 6 years older than me. And he was a naval aviator, which is a hell of an accomplishment. But he's still wearing his naval aviator jacket around at the age of 70 plus years old. Reminds me of a friend of mine, Howie, I went to high school with. Howie was a star of my high school basketball team. A star in 1976. When I see him, he's still talking about it. I can't barely remember my high school because I've got all these accomplishments that I've had in my adult life that inform me about who I am, that bashed in my self-image. And what is my self-image? I'll tell you what my self-image is. Let me read you a few that typify who I am and why I don't look back on my high school days or the different very dangerous things I've done in my life as anything other than post-traumatic stress disorder. Because I put my hope in the Lord. For with the Lord is unfailing love, and with him is redemption. Redemption. The Lord will rescue his servants. No one who takes refuge in him will be condemned. Let the redeemed of the Lord tell their story, those he redeemed from the hand of the foe. He provided redemption for his people. He ordained his covenant forever. Holy and awesome is his name. Into your hands I commit my spirit. Deliver me, Lord, my faithful God. It's a very important one for me because I'm out over my skis, but I'm following the way. I don't question where I'm led. I just look at what the next step is, lest I trip and fall. So I've reached the point finally towards the end of my life where I'm finally getting it together. It doesn't matter when we get it together. And if you're 25 years old and you get it together, Tanner, if you're at your age, you're not even 25 years yet,
No,
right?
I'm still 24.
24. You get it together now. God bless you. You have a lifetime of walking with security. Nobody talked to me like that when I was your age. I'm going to tell you what. I was the 70s. Nobody talked to me at all. because they were all liberals. They said, hey, follow your heart, do your own thing. That doesn't work that way. Freedom is not about doing what I want to do, it's doing what I ought to do. He sent his word and healed them. He rescued them from the grave. This is my self-image. My lips will shout for joy when I sing praise to you. I whom you have delivered, praise God forevermore. Because you freed me from my enemies, and your love endureth forever. He who redeems your life from the pit and crowns you with love and compassion. That's another one. You know, when you reach my age and you look out and you say, oh, I got kids and wives and ex-wives and friends. Lord, please redeem. Thank you. Got to pray correctly. Thank you for redeeming my life from the pit and crowning me with your love and compassion. When we pray, whatever we wish for when we pray, believe we've received it and we shall have it. You know, the liberals don't believe this. They don't believe it. They think it's a scam. Okay, great. Go ahead. Live your life empty, and when you die, the morphine will help. Praise the Lord, my soul, and forget not all his benefits, who forgives all my sins and heals all my diseases. Thank you. But with you there is forgiveness, so that I can, with reverence, serve you. It's a different kind of self-image, right? I guess there's people that would say I'm psychotic, mentally ill. I see that a lot. People labeling people as being mentally ill. That's a strange deal. I'll tell you what mentally ill is. Mentally ill is my president, my elected representative, my lame duck, dementia addled president, in the name of other people who we don't know who they are, authorizing Ukraine's use of U.S. missiles to hit targets inside Russia. Okay, now guess what, kids? You know, it's on. I was trying to say to you, Tanner, there was like 5 days. The weather was beautiful. Trump won. I was kind of relaxing, but I had this gnawing sense of unease. Like, I was watching Biden. We saw Biden and Trump in the White House. They were so nice with each other, shook hands, so friendly. But I'm watching on X and I'm watching on, the streaming services, and I'm listening to what the Democrats are saying, downstream of Biden. They don't seem so good with giving up power.
No.
They don't seem good about it, do they?
They want to recount. That's what I've
Oh,
been
they
seeing
want to
on
recount.
my X. I've been seeing a lot of people saying that this election was stolen and that they want to recount because they're saying, where did the 20 million votes go? Because they're seeing
That
the
is a
graphs.
CIA scam to cover up 2020, in my opinion. In my opinion.
Why would that cover it up, though? Because I found it fascinating because it's showing the graphs in how there was a huge spike in voters in 2020 that was uncharacteristic of any other year.
Right.
Wouldn't that kind of bring attention to the idea that maybe 2020 was stolen? Me personally, I don't really think it was stolen. I don't know though.
Well,
Once I
nobody,
saw those numbers, I was like, okay, I can kind of see why people think this.
when they're saying it was stolen, what they're saying is there was 20 million votes that disappeared.
Yeah.
So they're validating that those votes were there. What if those votes weren't really there?
Yeah, I guess I could see that.
Here they
I
come
see it the whole other way.
down the sides of the valley. They come, the two opposing armies in Braveheart, smashing into each other. So I, American citizen David Penn, can't figure out a shit. It's just a giant way to obscure because, how can I tell? How can I tell? I can't tell. I do know that every day more and more Americans are questioning free and fair elections, which is, a cornerstone of our republic. I mean, that's not good. But we have a president who just resigned for having dementia, who now authorized the Ukrainians. Was it really him or was he filling in for somebody who told him what to do? Authorized them to use long range munitions inside of Russia for the first time. and he's a lame duck president. Do you know anything about this?
I do, but what I was confused about was I thought that this was already happening. I'm trying to remember what area they were going into Russia.
They were not allowing the Ukrainians to use Western cruise missile technology inside of Russian territory. And just to, on Sunday during the football, when no one's paying attention, it was announced, the New York Times, friendly compatriots of the CIA, they announced that, oh, hey, guess what, Ukrainians, you're off the leash, go for it. And then quickly following thereafter was the French and the English, and they all said, go for it. So last night, um,
I remembered now. I'm sorry I cut you off. Kursk.
Kur-
Weren't they doing that in Kursk already?
no, they
Oh,
attacked Kursk,
but
and
it wasn't like so it's a whole different thing.
last night, 6 ATACMS missiles made here in the United States were launched and hit a munitions depot in Bryansk, which is a 5-hour drive from Moscow. Let me tell you what the problem with this is. Number one, Putin has changed his military doctrine so that he can respond with nuclear weapons. That's number one. Number two, these weapons, these attack missiles, these Storm Shadow missiles, they were created to carry a variety of payloads, ranging from cluster bombs to high explosives to, guess what? Nuclear warheads. So if you and me, my name's Dmitry and you're Igor, and we're in the bunker in the missile defense wing of the, Russian military, and we're sitting there looking at the radar screens, you and me, and we say, oh, hey, guess what, Igor? There's 6 missiles on the way. You have, and I have, no idea what's on the tip of those missiles. So, Putin's going to get a phone call. The bat phone's going to ring. Hey, boss, there's a bunch of missiles inbound. Takes about 3 minutes to get from launch to detonation, maybe less. These missiles go about 200 miles. And the Russians have to make their mind up whether or not it's a nuclear attack or not a nuclear attack. So here's where they are strategically. They know that if they just sit on their hands and take an ass whipping for 60 more days, Donald Trump's going to be in that chair where Biden is sitting and crapping all over the American people, and he will end the war. He has said he's going to end this war. 60 days. You know how much damage the Ukrainians can do to the Russians in 60 days with conventional weapons? Quite a bit. This is a phenomenal escalation of the war by a lame duck president who has been rejected. His party and their post World War II Democrat liberal order philosophy has been rejected in a resounding fashion. Don't you think, as an American citizen, it's a little strange that the lame duck administration would set off on a course of policy that could culminate in World War III? Doesn't that sound a little strange to you as a young man with a child?
I mean, it seems strange in the grand scheme of things, but it's not. I'm not surprised by this administration. It seems like that's all they've been doing is trying to egg on this war. So,
Yeah, well, I couldn't sleep last night
yeah.
because I'm very aware of how close we are to nuclear war. Now, on the other hand, one might say it's all a giant scam, that they're all in on it together. We don't know. Maybe Putin will pop off one nuke. It's all part of the script. We'll have a climate emergency, a health emergency, a strategic emergency, and we'll all get locked down. Hey, we've been there before, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe in response to these attacks in Russia, there'll be a giant cyber attack and power outages all over the United States, and we'll all lose our ability to communicate with each other. Wouldn't that? And only official government websites come back up. Maybe this could be the last time I'm talking to you. Could be. I mean, I'm just thinking the possibilities. I like to plan for the worst. Of course, the worst is nuclear war. How about This is a pretext for the shutdown of all of our communication systems. Because you know why we're winning this thing now? We here in this audience and all the people like us, it's because we've developed our own communications network. We've liberated ourselves from the mainstream media, which we figured out is just fencing a narrative. I'm not saying they don't believe in it, and I'm not saying I'm sure I'm right. I'm searching for truth. But when you listen to these people, they tell you what the truth is. That, in and of itself, should be disturbing. And then just south of the Ukraine, Israel and the United States are ramping up airstrikes in Syria, which is another attack on the Russians. Because as I've said many times in this previous podcasts, Russia has had a military cooperation with the Syrian government since 1946. The only Russian naval base with access to the Mediterranean is in Syria, and they have two giant air bases there. So this battle in Syria that the United States is up to its eyeballs in, that's you and me, that's our money, that's us, in harmony with the Israelis, this is another war on the Russians. It's a war on the Russians. We're at war. The gloves are off. Let's get out of this proxy mode. Let's quit talking about BS. We, the people, we, the United States of America, we are at war with a nuclear armed superpower. If this doesn't seem insane to you, then, hey, you're just passing on through. You're a neocon checking out the Professor Penn podcast. These neocons really conservatives. Yes, conservative neocons in association with their Democrat liberal neocon friends, the status quo, the centrists, the status quo, the uni party. These people are crazy. They're crazy. I mean, they're so crazy. And these people are all over the world. Israel's Minister of Settlements and National Missions, Orit Strok, has said she's working to ensure Israel can annex as much land in the West Bank. We're not talking about Gaza now. Now we're talking about the West Bank as possible during the incoming Trump administration. But said the Palestinians that live there, while they don't have any rights to the land and shouldn't have the rights to vote, should have the rights, human rights. Well, if they can't vote and they have no rights to the land, and that's a different kind of attenuated human right. In other words, we're not going to gas these people. That's going on in Israel. In the meantime, the UN has come out and said Israel's carrying out genocide in the Gaza. And the Human Rights Watch has come out and said Israel is committing war crimes, genocide. I mean, everybody is losing their friggin' minds here, right? And then, of course, hey, isn't it great that the uh, Muslims in the area are cooperating? Israel's Haifa, a beautiful city on the ocean, was hit by the largest Hezbollah rocket barrage of the war. Over 90 rockets were fired at the major port city, a massive barrage. People got hurt. There was damage. Crazy. So there's all this arguing now about Trump's various picks to fulfill roles in his administration. For example, Trump picked a dude named Mike Waltz to be his national security advisor. He's very hawkish. He's a Republican from Florida, a Ron DeSantis type. Staunch supporter of the Ukraine proxy war early on. One of the few members of Congress to suggest that the U.S. send military advisors into the country. Yes, Trump picked this guy. And Marco Rubio, another neocon war hawk. He tapped a dude named Lighthizer, who was in the first term, and Lighthizer is going to run the trade policy. He's a China hawk. It almost ensures there's going to be tariffs immediately imposed on imports. Trump nominates this Elise Stefanik as ambassador to the UN. She's an Israel supporter, staunch Israel supporter, an Iran hawk who has said there should be no conditions on U.S. military aid to Israel. Quote, there is no excuse for an American president to block aid to Israel. Stefanik led the charge against college students protesting U.S. support for Israel, smearing them as anti-Semitic for opposing Israel's onslaught in Gaza, even though many demonstrators were in fact Jewish themselves. Quote, I led the charge to expose this moral rot of anti Semitism infecting our supposed most elite higher education institutions. But then Trump has nominated Matt Gaetz for Justice Department, for example. Hegseth, Secretary of Defense. I mean, the kind of stuff that makes liberals' heads blow off their shoulders.
I think that the idea of the authoritarian promise is that everything shrivels in government other than the will of the leader, right? So you don't necessarily put a Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in charge of HHS because you're hoping for great things from HHS. I mean, Matt Gaetz, among all the other things we can say about Matt Gaetz, he has explicitly proposed abolishing the Justice Department, not specifically just abolishing the FBI and the ATF, but talking about abolishing the Justice Department. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard, as the Director of National Intelligence, the idea that Tulsi Gabbard, in a normal circumstance, could get a security clearance to be like a Walmart-style greeter at any U.S. intelligence agency, let alone get past the security barriers, is insane. So you do that because you want the worst for these agencies, because you want the worst for the U.S. government, because you think that the U.S. government is worthless. That's part of consolidating power, to make the U.S. government nothing other than the leader and people who will do what he says. And there not being any repository of expertise, let alone, just general day-to-day know-how anywhere. So it's a sort of, I mean, as Steve Bannon used to say, it's a sort of Leninist project, right? Destroy the state. This is the cabinet that you nominate to not to run the U.S. government to do anything, but to destroy the U.S. government, so that the U.S. government can be fundamentally reimagined as something much more like a unitary, authoritarian, or autocratic, for lack of a better term, system.
Yes, Rachel Maddow, that's correct. Your folks, you, allegedly a liberal, allegedly, we won't want to call you a fascist, that'd be a little tough. Your president has authorized the use of long-range cruise missiles supplied by we the people at, no charge to the Ukrainians. We're paying for it. He's authorized the use of these weapons hundreds of miles inside of Russia, a nuclear-armed power. Yes, that's correct. It's time to deconstruct the administrative state, all of its agencies, and root out every asshole that holds a position of power or authority, which could generate the kind of policies that lead the United States into a direct military confrontation with the Russians. These people don't deserve to be in power. $36 trillion of debt, an open border. Yes, the expertise they have is an expertise that needs and has been rejected by the American people. We've rejected it. So when President Trump nominates people that would seem to be coming in to take a wrecking ball to these bureaucracies, that's exactly what he's doing. Now, when it comes to foreign policy, he's put a lot of hawks out there. Hawks. Traditionalists, because it's too soon to judge. I have this dark fantasy that he picked Marco Rubio, who is clearly part of the neocon warhawk establishment, and he's going to be the Secretary of State, right? So he's going to have to travel around the world and deliver Trump's message to various foreign leaders. And I just get a kick out of the possibility that Trump nominated him to deliver Trump's message, which is exactly the opposite of what Marco Rubio has worked for his entire career. So he's this is my fantasy. I don't know what's going to happen, but I just get this kind of dream that he just strips this guy's gears when Rubio says, well, President Trump, I think we should do this. And President Trump looks at him and says, hey, do you want to keep your job in show business? You know, you're no longer a senator. Would you like me to fire you, or are you going to do what I tell you to do? Get on that plane and tell him what I said tell him. I kind of like that. You know? You know, in the mafia, when you get clipped out, you always get clipped out by well, not always, but oftentimes you get clipped out by one of your best friends. You know, somebody you've been to the bar with, went bowling with, you know, somebody you grew up with. You know, that's the way it goes down, baby. Don't hate the players, hate the game. And this game is the dirty low down. We're still in the dirty low down. We want to refresh this and make it based on republicanism, which is an anti-corruption philosophy. You know, the Pentagon just failed yet another audit. Just another one again. We'll be reporting on that coming up. Just on a basic trade note, President Trump takes the seat on January 20th. I think these tariffs are coming not very long thereafter. That union that mans the East Coast and Gulf Coast ports, the International Longshoremen's Association, has broken off talks again with the United States Maritime Alliance, the USMX, over disputes about port automation, raising the possibility of renewed strikes at U.S. East and Gulf Coast ports starting on the 15th of January. Yes, they are going to strike again, it seems. Yes, it does. I think President Trump is favorable to this union. I think there's going to be a lot of surprises coming up. These U.S. Maritime Alliance members are all foreign companies. We don't have a single American corporation in this Maritime Alliance. It includes a company called COSCO, China Overseas Shipping Corporation, the Chinese government. I think President Trump would be just happy to see these ports not get automated. Why would you want to increase the throughput of imports when the cornerstone of your administration is reducing imports? So this is going to get a little strange. Okay, it's going to get a little strange, perhaps. I'm not a fortune teller. I'm just an importer. I'm just a guy who could go bankrupt in this little kerfuffle, as could tens of thousands of American businesses. So there will be a settlement. There will be a settlement. What that settlement is, well, we're going to start to find out what the Trump administration is all about. Let's take a break from all this seriousness. You know, there has to be some humor and some music to go with content that is this troubling. And there was a great movie that came out in the 1980s. I think it was like 1984. I have to check on that. It was an Eddie Murphy movie called Trading Places. Some of you have heard of it. I'm going to bet, Tanner, you've never heard of this.
No.
You do not have to put this movie on your must-watch list, because I know you've not caught up even with The Godfather yet.
No.
Because when you do that, you're going to come in and tell me, wow, that was cool. But you're not going to watch. This one is not a must-see TV. But I'm bringing this up for a reason, which I'm going to talk about as we roll on through some of these very hilarious clips. Could you please play number 3?
See, I had to keep the dude under tight surveillance, man. That's why I'm wearing these bummy clothes. You had to make sure the dude had his payroll before I made my move.
Tell us how you cut him.
Yeah, I ain't cut him with no knife, man.
But you told me last night you cut the dude.
With these, I cut him. I am a chain belt in Kung Fu. Bruce Lee was my teacher. Watch this. What? Called the quarter blood technique. You do that, a quarter blood will drop out of a person's body.
Tell how you beat on the cop.
Wasn't no cop, man. It was cops. Plural. 9, 10 cops. Beat the shit out of 10 cops and had to change my whole strategy around.
Yo, when they brought you in here and booked you, you was crying like a pussy.
Yeah,
That's cause as one of the cops fell, he threw tear gas in my face. And that's the kind of shit they use on crowds, man. I still walking in here like a man, so get out of my face, all right?
I mean, you beating up on a man, you putting a man in the hospital. How come I don't see no marks on you?
Yeah, cause I'm a karate man, all right? Karate man bruise on the inside. They don't show their weaknesses. But you don't know that cause you're a big Barry White looking motherfucker. Now get off my back, all right? I wish my bitches hurry up and get here. I ain't got no time to be sitting inside this cell with you.
Where is your bitches, Mr. Big Time Pimp? Yeah.
Didn't I tell you that the phone in my limousine is busted and I can't get in contact with my bitches?
Yeah, the phone in the limo is busted. What is you, ignorant?
Hey, look, sit down, all right?
It ain't cool being no jive turkey so close to Thanksgiving.
Hey, man. You boys don't know what you're doing. I can see that already. Do you know who you fucking with? Do you know who you fucking with? Ah, back the fuck up. Back up. You know who you fucking with in cell number 4 on the 9th floor?
Billy Ray Valentine?
Yes?
Move it. You made bail.
I did. May I suggest using a nightstick, officer? Get out of here!
So this is the story of Billy Ray Valentine, a oppressed American citizen of meager means, and his antagonist Winthrop, who is a very wealthy member of the establishment of the elite, and Winthrop's bosses, the Duke brothers, want to have a little bet. They're trying to determine, is it nature or nurture? In other words, are the differences between people genetic or are they cultural? And that in the 80s was a big deal because we were, in the grips still of intergenerational racism that was based in the minds of the people on genetics. Genetics. And this movie is about a bet that these two Duke brothers, these super rich dudes, made to determine for themselves. They made a wager. Is it nature or nurture? Could you please play number 4?
Given the right surroundings and encouragement, I'll bet that man could run our company as well as your young Winthrop.
Are we talking about a wager, Randolph? I suppose you think Winthrop, say if he were to lose his job, would resort to holding up people on the streets?
No, I don't think just losing his job would be enough for Winthrop. I think we'd have to heap a little more misfortune on those narrow shoulders. If he lost his job and his home and his fiancée and his friends, if he were somehow disgraced and arrested by the police and thrown in jail even, yes, I'm sure he'd take the crime like a fish to water.
You'd have to put him in the wrong surroundings, of course, with the worst sort of people. I mean real scum, Randall.
We've done it before. This time it's in a good cause. How much you want to bet?
The usual amount?
Why not?
Well, there's the bet, nature versus nurture. And they take Billy Ray and they put him in some very fancy digs and give him a little bit of inputs, education. And watch this on number 5.
Let's hit rock bottom. Come on, let's buy.
Mortimer Duke here. Buy 200 Maybelline contracts at 66.8. Put it on my personal account.
It's a big mistake, man.
Valentine, something very important is going on here. Just watch.
All right, but y'all gonna get reamed on this one.
Well, why shouldn't we buy now, William?
Price is gonna keep going down.
Randolph, this isn't monopoly money we're playing with.
This is Randolph, Duke. Hold that belly order a moment. Tell me just why you think the price of pork bellies is going down, William.
It's Christmas time. Everybody's uptight.
Could we please buy now, Randolph?
All right, but if you want to lose money, go ahead.
What are you trying to say, William?
Okay, pork belly prices have been dropping all morning, which means everybody's sitting in their office and they're waiting for them to hit rock bottom so they can buy cheap and go long. So people that own the pork belly contracts are going batshit because they're thinking, hey, we're losing all our damn money and Christmas is around the corner and I ain't gonna have no money to buy my son the G.I. Joe with the Kung Fu grip, okay? And my wife ain't gonna make love to me because I ain't got no money, right? So they're sitting there and they panicking, they screaming, sell, sell, because they don't want to lose all their money, right? They out there panicking right now. I can feel it. They out there. They're panicking. Look at it.
He's right, Mortimer. My God, look at it.
I wait till you get to about 64, then I'd buy. You'd have cleared out all the suckers by then.
Do you realize how much money he just saved us?
Money isn't everything, Randolph.
Advise our clients interested in bellies to buy at 64. Mr. Valentine has set the price.
So there you have the verification that it's not really nature, it's really nurture because they've taken this Billy Ray off the street, put him in a gorgeous place to live, gave him a bunch of inputs and knowledge, and now he's running Duke and Duke. He's the man. Billy Ray set the price. And just take a look at what they did to poor Winthorpe. Poor Winthorpe, who was in charge of Duke and Duke, who they just, in their power, decided to trash to prove this theory. Let's watch Winthorpe.
Winthorpe. Louis III. All right. One gold watch. One alligator skin wallet. MasterCharge, American Express, gold card. Visa, Diners Club, carte blanche. 2 tickets. La Boheme.
La Boheme. It's an opera.
It's an opera? One cellophane bag.
That's not mine. I've never seen that before in my life.
That's PCP. Phencyclidine. Angel dust. You ever seen what this stuff does to kids? You are looking at 3 to 5 mandatory.
This is a very interesting movie. I mean, if you have the time, Tanner, it's funny. And it was all in goodwill. It was the early 80s. The early 80s was a period of time in this country of peace, of prosperity, of relative social cohesiveness. I mean, here's, Eddie Murphy, big and bold, a star is born. And we're adjudicating this idea that comes right out of the halls of the British academia. This is the origin of the species argument here. And we thought, I did when I saw this, I said, whoa, this is great. Because, the differences are not genetic. The differences are cultural. And therefore, if we make the inputs in the culture, which of course justifies the welfare state, it's all good in the hood, right? That's what this movie was all about. But what we didn't understand at the time, is that the Darwinists were on both sides of the football. I didn't get it. The academics didn't get it. The academics were trying to lead us away from genetic-based racism into a socially engineered, more equitable society. But we didn't know what was happening. And I don't know if these movie makers, what side of the football they were on. But they took the genetic-based awful racism, which goes back to chattel slavery, and they turned it into, hey, it's all about nurture, which becomes social Darwinism. It set up the predicate of social Darwinism. It doesn't matter what your genetics are. It matters what your culture is. What your culture is. That's how we're going to judge people based on their cultural manifestations. And how did that turn out for us? It led us into having a neocon culture where when you get a PhD or you have an advanced degree, you're better than the rest of us, aren't you? Those of you who have PhDs, MDs, Juris Doctors. Oh, you're so much better. You're so much better. Your culture is so much better. Your understanding is so much better. You don't believe in God. I mean, that's an illusion, right? You're so deep with this scientific culture that you've created that the rest of us can't even get into because we're too stupid. So they transformed from a genetic based kind of racism and superiority, a caste system, and they turned it into a cultural one. Yes, they did. And anybody can be admitted to the high end of that cultural system. Black, white, green, red, didn't matter. If you were educated and you had money, you were the top of the heap. And this has perverted our entire politics, our entire society. And we have throughout our whole country these educated people that believe they're better. And they believe American culture is better. And they believe that America needs to be the policeman of the world, that America needs to be the strongest country in the world, lest these barbarians in Russia and these barbarians in China and these barbarians in the Middle East destroy everything that's good about the world. And they come right down into the politics of Minnesota. There was this group of people, that when Royce White, and this goes on in every state, right? I'm only talking about it in Minnesota because I'm a Minnesotan and I'm a activist in Minnesota, and I want to see this stuff get set right. There was these three activists, Prayasem Sunder, a guy named Dustin Gragey, and Michael Broadcorp. The three mice, the three little mice, that when Royce popped up on the scene to run for Senate, they tore him down in every way that they could. Every way. Lies, half-truths, innuendos. They impugned him and, his intelligence. I mean, everything that they could do to discredit him in front of the eyes of the Republican Party voters that was their audience. They're not Democrats. They're Republicans who believe in the post-World War II Democrat liberal order. That if a candidate does not support the order, they're not a good candidate. Prayasem Sunder just put a big editorial out in the local communist newspaper, the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. And her point was that, Royce was not a good candidate and he should never run again. Bad person. Bad candidate. Why? Because his message is one of peace. One of peace. Every one of these candidates, I don't care if it's Ron DeSantis or Thomas Massey or Matt Gaetz or Donald Trump or Royce White or Tim Walz. You can dig up any story you want and spin it any way you want to. And there are things that would be, possibly disqualifying for a candidate, like, I don't know, authorizing the use of American munitions inside of a nuclear superpower's territory. That would be kind of, disqualified. Hey, a $36 trillion debt, that would be disqualifying. An open border when 10 or 15 or 20 million people come across, that would be disqualifying. Things like that are disqualifying. Things that destroy my country, destroy your country, our country, that would be disqualifying. And I guess if someone was a mass murderer or a pedophile, there's pedophiles everywhere, apparently. I don't know about any one of them in particular, but I do know there are pedophiles. Something I'll talk about on a future podcast. But they discredit these people not necessarily because of what they've done in their personal lives, but because of the policies that they're going to pursue. And both sides do it. It's the politics of personal attack. I'm not into that. I'm into the politics of policy. I'm into the politics of outcomes. What is the outcome of the last 75 years? We are attacking a nuclear superpower. That's the outcome. That's the only thing that matters to me. TireGet, TireGet.com. TireGet is here for the movement and for all the broadcasters and channels and stations that are presenting this content for you. TireGet is a online e-commerce platform where you can buy your tires. Now, everybody buys tires, or most of us buy tires. There's everything there that you need for your vehicles. All kinds of different brands, premium major brands, premium private label brands, every kind of tire. You go there, you pick your tire. We will ship the tires to the installer right by your house at no extra charge. You pay TireGet to have your tires installed. It's a one-stop shop for everything you need in tires and the best customer service in the tire business. So the next time you buy tires, think of TireGet. You got to buy your tires from someone. Please buy them from us. I plan for the worst and hope for the best. I want to believe that we're going to get through this and get to a Trump administration. So we're going to continue to promote the podcast. We're going to work on the 2026 campaign. I'm going to continue as a Republican Party delegate and officer. And we're going to continue to try to grow the TireGet business because your support, that's how we're going to grow the programming here at Free People Radio. You know, I was thinking about, man, you're going to know I'm making money and not on the verge of bankruptcy because I'll start wearing suits again. I'd like to change my set. I've got this new growing national radio audience I'm working on. You know, there's so much good going on here. And we at Free People Radio are, and you, this audience, we're participating in deconstructing the kind of narrative that gives us these neocons like Sam Sunder and Broadcorp and Grady. And let's talk about who these people are. Sam Sunder was a Nikki Haley supporter. I couldn't think of a more disqualifying kind of politic. Oh, yes, I could. Broadcorp. He actually came out and endorsed Harris Waltz as a former deputy chair of the Minnesota Republican Party. Oh, boy, that's great, Broadcorp. What a genius you are. I hope you stay over on that side of the football with Sam Sunder and Grady. Grady's a little bit trickier. He tries to portray himself as a conservative Republican. But his politics is not unambiguously nationalist because he was not a Donald Trump supporter. He didn't like Trump. He didn't like him. And I'm not saying, and I've said this, it's not that Trump is someone that I follow like a cult. It's that it's the resurgence of republicanism, which people can't even recognize it. They're so far removed from the philosophy of republicanism. And in other words, tariffs that protect our workers and our native country, borders that protect our population and make the value of our citizenship increase, a willingness to withdraw from NATO and withdraw from foreign entanglements so that we can have a peaceful and prosperous country. The kind of things that republicanism brought to our country when we disengaged from the Europeans. See, it's that disengagement from the European intellectual tradition that really is the defining philosophical factor of republicanism. So all these people that, we got to do this, we got to do that. You guys suck. Now let's talk about what really happened here in Minnesota, which was Royce White outperformed all the previous candidates who had challenged Amy Klobuchar. And I just want to show you what's going on because this is typical of many states in the Midwest. Tanner, could you please put up these maps starting with the 2006 Senate result? You see that 2006? Wow. All blue. Little bit of pink, but mostly it's blue or very blue. Let's go to 2012. That's during the Obama period. The Republicans got waxed except for the very southwest corner of Pipestone County. It's all blue. And then here comes Donald Trump in 2018. And you see the state start to transform. Lots of pinks and reds in there. Lots of pinks and reds. And these are the stories of the previous races of previous Republicans against Amy Klobuchar. Now let's look at this 2024 race we just had. Look at the state of Minnesota. Look at Minnesota activists. Look at this. All the people that would criticize Royce White, this is his result. He won almost every county in the state. You can take a look at where he lost. The Hennepin, Dakota, Ramsey County, core city of Minneapolis and St. Paul, and the Arrowhead region of Duluth, which is a heavy union town. And that Arrowhead region, that's along Lake Superior, where all the wealthy liberals go to live up in what's called the BWCA, the Boundary Waters Canoe Area. You know, that's what it is, right?
That's my favorite
It's not my
area.
favorite, too.
Yeah, I
I've
love
been there
that
100
spot.
times. But when I go up there, I don't turn into a liberal.
No.
So, you know, the increase year after year that's been coming forward with this Trump movement. And that's what it is, and Royce is part of that movement. And I'm going to say this to all my fellow Republican officers who are watching me. Why would you get in the way of success? I mean, if you know, I know you're watching me because you're with me, but you got people you know who are not with us. But they can change. We can change. We have the possibility of change, of transformation. I say all the time, you've heard me say it, I voted for George W. Bush. What the hell was wrong with me? I love George H.W. Bush. Even crazier. We have to wake up from the programming. Now, there are people that are never going to wake up, and they need to go caucus with the Democrat. You know, Sherrod Brown is smoking crack. The Democrat liberal order is about the international order. It's not about American workers. The Republicans are about Americans, American citizens, American workers, and the well-being of every American citizen. Man, there is nothing more informative than watching heads blow off over RFK Jr.'s nomination to be the Secretary of Health and Human Services. Man, people are going crazy about this. And, you know, for me, as someone who has struggled with health issues my entire life, forcing me to be very focused on how to be well, I just read the criticisms of Kennedy, and I just say, man, this medical industrial complex and this military industrial complex, they're the same thing, the same idea, the same people. We have to use science to control things, to destroy things. There's no philosophy of life in these $4 trillion plus that we spend as we the people. There's no philosophy of life. There's no search for truth. They have a truth, and it provides benefits, but at what cost? At what cost are those benefits delivered? And we're in this giant fight now. It is a giant throwdown, a battle of the highest order. And I'm going to say this, and I'm going to keep saying it over and over again. President Trump's agenda is so ambitious. He has about 51, I think it's 51 agenda items. They've pre-programmed what they want to do. 51 items. 17 of those items require congressional support. 34 items President Trump's going to accomplish through executive action. Every one of those executive actions will be challenged in court, will delay the imposition of his new ideas, the court process, and those 34 cases will eventually find their way to the Supreme Court, where in most circumstances, not all, but most, President Trump's agenda will be supported by the Supreme Court. Because the Supreme Court, that's why the left is going crazy about the court for the last 2 years. They knew it was a vulnerability, and now they're going to get a Supreme Court suppository. The court, in most cases, not all, most, will side with the Trump agenda. But on the legislative side, the 17 agenda items that need legislative support, starting with these cabinet picks, we are going to see, you and me, Tanner, we're going to see who's really a Republican and who's really a Democrat liberal order acolyte hanging out in the Republican Party. The only way this agenda, this tremendous cultural revolution of restoring republicanism is going to succeed is that every single one of us realizes the power of self-governance. It's not going to work otherwise. All of us need to try, to go, to strive, to get into our local political parties and become delegates. And what is a delegate? A delegate is a person who has a vote. You're actually going to be part of the game. How do you become a delegate? Well, every state's a little bit different. That's why you go to precinctstrategy.com, where the information about your state will be found. But you become a delegate here in Minnesota by going to caucus in 2026. Caucus is a neighborhood meeting. You get elected in your caucus room to be a delegate to your Senate District Convention. And at your Senate District Convention, you have a vote in who gets chosen to be a delegate to the state convention and to congressional district conventions. And when you become a delegate to your congressional district convention and to your state convention, guess what you get to do? You get to look at the votes of your elected representatives. And if they've worked against the Republican agenda, you get to retire them. Because in every case, a true Republican will show up to run against what we call rhinos. Now, if nobody enters the party, if we don't change the party delegate base, the parties will re-endorse the same assholes that just got us to the place where we're attacking Russia inside of Russia with $36 trillion of debt in an open border. It's the same people. It's those people that have to go. And they're represented by the media types that support them. The Preah Sunders, the Michael Broadcorps. We have to remove these people. Their self-image is tied up in America, not as being a God-fearing nation, but as being a scientific hegemon that can control the world. That's what they are supporting. They believe in that. They don't believe in limited government. They don't believe in deconstructing the administrative state. They don't believe that maybe everything is wrong. It needs to be overturned, as Jesus did when he went into the temple and turned over the tables of the money changers. It's that sick, and it requires that level of healing. So when we become delegates in 2026, because that's just around the corner, that's the next hill, and we take and we say, oh, Mr. Congressman so-and-so, we see that your votes obstructed the administration's agenda. I'm going to vote against you. We can retire these neocon war hawks and set our country free from the British business model of slavery, drugs, and piracy. That's what we're doing here as citizens. But I have Chinese friends that grew up in authoritarian systems. Like in China, President Xi is the leader of the Communist Party. He's also the leader of the Chinese military. It's a unitary situation. If the military in China decides that the supreme leader needs to go, he goes. So my Chinese friend said to me, yeah, this is great. This is fantastic. What side is the military on? I thought to myself, whoa. The military is not on the citizen's side. The military is the largest globalist enterprise in the world other than the banking system, which in fact it works for and enforces the world banking order. That's what our military is really up to. And I thought to myself, boy, we're not really ready for this as American citizens. We don't realize that the military is really in control of how this turns out. And I thought back, well, what is the cultural references for this? And there was a great movie, 1964, a John Frankenheimer movie called 7 Days in May. In 7 Days in May, I want to play the climax scene with Burt Lancaster playing General, I think it's James Mattoon. He's going to say his name. And I just want you to listen to this dialogue. Now, in this movie, the military, this is 1960s, they were the nationalist group and the president was the globalist group. But listen to the interplay between the president in the military, man. And imagine it's going on right now today in the halls of power. Could you please play number 7?
Good evening, Mr. President.
Sit down, General.
Thank you. I'm glad, sir, you decided to call off that fishing trip.
Don't bother about that. We don't need it tonight. We aren't going to have an alert tomorrow.
I beg your pardon, Mr. President. You wish the alert canceled?
I do. I intend to cancel it.
Well, may I ask why?
Certain facts have come to my attention lately. I won't waste time by detailing them all now. I'll simply say that I want your resignation tonight. And those of Generals Hardesty, Riley, and Diefenbach as well.
You're either joking, Mr. President, or you've taken leave of your senses. I know of no reason why I should remove my name from the active list voluntarily, or for that matter, any of the other Joint Chiefs.
You could give me the reasons, General. But if you want me to itemize them, I shall be glad to do so.
Please do.
You have used, without my authority, substantial sums from the Joint Chiefs Contingency Fund to establish a base and to train a special unit of troops whose purpose and even whose existence was kept secret from me, from responsible officials of the Bureau of the Budget, and members of the Congress.
And the name of that unit?
You know the unit. Its designation is ECOMCON.
I'm afraid your memory fails you, Mr. President. You gave me verbal authorization for the base and the unit. As I recall it, we covered quite a few items that day. Perhaps you didn't pay much attention to this. I merely assumed you'd informed the director of the budget.
What was the date of that meeting, General?
I can't recall exactly, but it was right here in this office. Last fall, November, I believe.
You have a record of the date and subject?
Well, certainly, Mr. President. In my office. Well, if you care to make a point of it, I'll drive over to the Pentagon right now and get it.
That won't be necessary, General.
No, it won't be necessary. Colonel Murdoch, my aide, is outside. He sat in on the meeting. He will substantiate my memorandum as to the date and the discussion. I'll ask him in.
That won't be necessary either, General. You kept a member of the United States Senate forcibly detained at this base, and he will so testify.
And that would be?
That would be Senator Raymond Clark, the senior senator from Georgia.
I wasn't aware that Senator Clark had ever visited the base.
He will also testify as to the collusion between the commander of the base and one Senator Frederick Prentice of California, who with yourself and only a handful of others knew of the existence of the base.
Any other charges, Mr. President?
Would you like them in chronological order? The selection of a commanding officer for a secret base who was openly contemptuous of civilian authority and who has made some statements that come close to violations of the sedition laws.
Mr. President, I never discuss politics with my officers, but I do demand the highest competence. And Colonel Broderick is an excellent officer with a fine combat record.
And an interesting travel record, you might add. What, for example, was he doing the other day on a motorboat, cruising around my island at Blue Lake, Maine? And don't tell me that's a figment of my imagination, because I've got him on film. Now, what about the kidnapping and detention of Colonel William Henderson at Dulles Airport early this morning?
I know about that case, Mr. President. Colonel Henderson struck an enlisted man and left his post. He's now being held for disciplinary action.
Incommunicado, you might add, so that he doesn't tell what he knows. And there are the wagering activities of yours, General, particularly a betting pool on the Preakness.
Oh, come now, Mr. President.
Or perhaps more aptly classified, your personal and private code. It covers your plan for the military overthrow of the United States government.
I presume, Mr. President, you're prepared to back up that charge?
I am prepared to brand you for what you are, General. A strutting egoist with a Napoleonic power complex. And an out-and-out traitor. I know you think I'm a weak sister, General. But when it comes to my oath of office, defending the Constitution of the United States...
Somebody has to teach me how to salute a flag.
Somebody has to teach you about the democratic processes that flag represents.
But don't you presume to take on that job, Mr. President. Because, frankly, you're not qualified. Your course of action in the past year has bordered on criminal negligence. This treaty with the Russians is a violation of any concept of security. You're not a weak sister, Mr. President. You're a criminally weak sister. And if you want to talk about your oath of office, I'm here to tell you face to face, President Lyman, that you violated that oath when you stripped this country of its muscles, when you deliberately played upon the fear and fatigue of the people and told them they could remove that fear by the stroke of a pen. And then when this nation rejected you, lost its faith in you, and began militantly to oppose you, you violated that oath by simply not resigning from office and turning this country over to someone who could represent the people of the United States.
And that would be General James Mattoon Scott, wouldn't it? I don't know whether to laugh at that kind of megalomania or simply cry.
James Mattoon Scott, as you put it, hasn't the slightest interest in his own glorification. But he does have an abiding concern about the survival of this country.
Then, by God, run for office. You have such a fervent, passionate, evangelical affection for your country. Why in the name of God don't you have any faith in the system of government you're so hell-bent to protect? You say I've duped the people, General. I built them. I've misled them. I've stripped them naked and made them defenseless. You accuse me of having lost their faith, deliberately and criminally shut my ears to the national voice.
I do.
Well, where the hell have you heard that voice, General? In freight elevators? In dark alleys? In secret places in the dead of night? How did that voice seep into a locked room full of conspirators? That's not where you hear the voice of the people, General, not in this republic. You want to defend the United States of America, then defend it with the tools it supplies you with, its Constitution. You ask for a mandate, General, from a ballot box. You don't steal it after midnight, when the country has its back turned.
Are you serious, Mr. President? Are you honest to God serious? Well, I could walk out of here tonight and offer myself as candidate for the office of presidency. And by tomorrow morning, I'd be sitting at that desk with precisely the mandate you hold so dear. And what's more, Mr. President, you know it, and I know it, and this country knows it. So don't tell me I'd have seized an office tomorrow without the benefit of support. If you really had the guts to call for a show of hands, you'd be on an airplane right now back to Ohio.
You can ask for and get your show of hands, General. Just wait a year and 9 months for something called election.
A year and 9 months from now, I don't think there'll be an electorate, let alone an election. I think we'll be sitting on our own rubble. A minimum of 100 million dead. And on the gravestone we can carve, they died for Jordan Lyman's concept of peace.
James Mattoon Scott. The military. That's 1964. All the elements of what's going on right now in our country were going on then. Russians, treaties, peace, the military opposing the civilian government's attempt to bring prosperity and safety to the American people by demilitarizing. I fear that these very same tensions exist right now today. As you know, President Trump has talked about court-martialing General Milley for his actions at the end of the first Trump administration. Who are these leaders? I'm not talking about the grundoons that are in the serving in the military, captains and majors and colonels. I'm talking about the very top brass of our military. They're running the largest globalist operation on the planet except for the world banking system, and they are the muscle for that system. Peaceful transition of power, eh? Who pushed President Biden to authorize the use of these weapons inside of Russia? Who benefits from such increase in tensions? What possible crises might be developed between today and the 20th of January that were foretold in this great movie, 7 Days in May? I don't know. You don't know. We're not in those rooms. But we as American citizens need to know that ultimately it's up to us. There's just a handful of them, and there's hundreds of millions of American citizens, all of us striving for peace and prosperity, setting aside those neocons who believe and what General James Mattoon Scott is selling, those people are a danger to my 6 kids. Those people, in my opinion, are insane. And all the media darlings that run around and carry water for those people, all those people that are on the payroll are equally insane because they have children, they have families, but their self-image is tied up in America being the greatest country in the history of the world. My self-image is tied up in America being a place where I can practice my faith quietly and pursue peace and skills that are attractive to me, like all the things that I do. I don't want to have everything I've built my entire life and everything my children have built their entire lives be swept away by this insane dependence on military supremacy, this insane dependence on cultural hegemony. That's why I played Trading Places. I pray, dear God, and thank you for saving us, that we reach January 20th intact and that a new administration can come forth and defang these vipers and remove them and all they stand for from our country. And on that note, I want to end on a lighthearted musical number that was suggested to me by one of my loyal viewers, Kim. She said, "Hey, could you please play some Eagles?" And you know, the Eagles, we're going back to the 80s now, in the 70s, when life was relatively good. I was there. You weren't born. You don't realize how good I had it when I was your age. I mean, it was really great. It was great. We're going to go out with Eagles one of these nights. The drummer of the Eagles, Don Henley, to drum with this kind of accuracy and sing with this kind of voice, this guy is a musical genius. One of the best voices in the history of rock and roll. This band, one of the best bands in the history of rock and roll. Very enjoyable. Thank you, Kim, for suggesting it. Thank you for joining me tonight. Thank you for putting up with my intensity. God willing, we'll be back on Thursday. Lots going to happen between today and Thursday, I'm sure, and I'm looking forward to discussing it with you at that time. Have a good night, everybody. Be well. Pray.
Have a great night, everybody.